Bir sponsor videomuz daha var. İzleyelim. Hemen ardından son konuşmacımızı davet edelim.
Perfect presentations every time has been our main goal for 40 years. So here's how finest presentations are possible every time. We work for impeccable dining and drinking experiences. We offer premium and highly functional products. We design the vision of the future. We crown our original collections with numerous awards. We establish trust-based and sincere relationships. With energy efficiency, we accomplish circular production. We make our biggest investment in humans. Bonna makes the finest presentations possible, each and every time. Bonna, passionately dedicated.
Efendim sıradaki panelimiz günün son paneli, son konuşmacısı. Panel demeyelim aslında, konuşmacı diyelim. İsveç'ten geliyor. El Bulli gibi Michelin yıldızlı restoranlarda kendisini geliştirdi. 2011'de yalnızca açık ateşte pişirme konseptiyle 3. restoranı Ekstedt'e açtı. Niklas Ekstedt, The Scandi Art of Open Fire Cooking başlığında konuşacak bize ve kendisini alkışlarla sahneye davet ediyorum. Niklas, stage is yours.
Wow.
See, people are filming, people are, hey, here's my hand. Hello.
Thank you so
Good
much.
to have you.
Yeah.
No, thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you all for staying so long. I know it's been a long day, and I'm not going to make you disappointed that you stayed for me, okay? First of all, I would like to thank Gastromasa for having me here. I absolutely love Istanbul, and this is probably my 5th or 6th time here. Before the pandemic, I used to come here almost once a year to this beautiful city, and I've also been traveling around Turkey. And I think when I've explained a little bit who I am and what I do, you will understand why I love Turkey so much. Because I'm a chef in Stockholm, Sweden. Do everyone know where Sweden is? So I don't need to explain Sweden. It's in between Finland and Norway. We squeezed in the middle between our two beautiful neighbors. And then we have Denmark down south, but we don't have to mention them. But they're also great. So I'm raised in this little village up in northern Sweden on the border to Norway called Järpen. And we have very long winters. We have 6-9 months winter, very cold weather, and beautiful northern lights. At this time of year, you know, the weather clears up and we have beautiful bright sky and cold nights, and we're waiting for the first snow to come. And I was trained I went to the culinary school in my little town where I was raised. And I didn't pay too much attention in culinary school. I was mostly focusing on girls and skateboarding and going out in the mountains, and didn't pay too much attention in school. But the last year of culinary class, the last year when I was 4th year in gymnasium, which is when you're 17, 18 years old, we got a new teacher. And my new teacher, he was absolutely amazing. And he showed me the culinary world and showed me what cooking can do. And he brought celebrity chefs' cookbooks to the school, because this was before internet, so we couldn't Google things. And so he brought us cookbooks about celebrity chefs and about culinary. And I said, and then so when I was 17, 18 years old, I decided I wanted to be a professional chef. And I traveled the world and started working at Michelin-starred restaurants. I worked at El Bulli, at Charlie Trotter's, at Alain Ducasse, and so on. And I was trained in the French, in the 90s when I was a young chef coming out in the world. France was the number one country to go to. No one knew where Sweden was. And they were like confused in the kitchen where I worked. They usually just thought I was Swiss. They're like, oh, I love mountains and chocolate and Swiss Army knives. And I'm like, no, I'm not Swiss, I'm Swedish. That's how unknown we were. And then eventually I moved back home. I opened my own restaurant, and because I didn't know better, because I thought that people, when they went out fine dining, they wanted French food or like European food. So my first food that I started working with in my restaurant was more like European fusion food. But then slowly, in the beginning of last millennium, like 2004 or 5, there were chefs popping up in Denmark and in Stockholm and in Helsinki that started cooking new Nordic food. So Noma came up, Faviken came along and showed the way. And these were friends of mine. And I thought that my restaurant need to do this as well. But so I really went down to the root to think like the root of it all. Where do I come from? Where does my culinary heritage like begins? And what do I want to do, not like next year? What do I do in 20 years? What do I want to be proud of? And in Sweden, the tree, I think like in many communities, the tree is so important. And wood and fire and heat in a country pre-electricity, the wood wasn't only important for us, it was survival. Because when it's minus 20 Celsius outside and you don't have enough wood, you'll die. And then, so I went to the library and started researching about this. And I found these fascinating stories about how we used to cook only with wood and only with birch in the kitchens, and how that impacted the food and the culture and the way that we lived. So I decided 15 years ago that I wanted my restaurant to be completely analog and completely rooted in the way that we cooked in Sweden 200 years ago. And back now, it's very common with a grill or an open fire in a restaurant, but when I first did it, it was very unknown, and people were very shocked. But it all started with this book. And why I wanted to show you this tree as well is because my name, I know this is talking about myself, but Ekstedt actually means an oak. And so that's also, so the oak is here. And the tree has always been in the middle of humanity, and in every religion and every culture, a tree is very important, the tree of life. It's always been important. And when you think of Scandinavia, you probably think of Miklagård. And Miklagård was the name the Vikings named Istanbul. So I was just going to mention that while I was here. And when I first started cooking 15 years ago, when I started researching history, I went back to the 1700 approximately and started researching the way that we used to cook. And I was afraid of cooking Viking food because I thought it would be almost like a joke. Like why would anyone take me seriously if I was the Viking chef? I didn't want to be the Game of Thrones Viking chef. And but luckily the years went on, and when I did my cooking and my old style of food, historians started writing to me and went to my restaurant and explored it. And they actually said that there were a lot of different techniques that the Vikings used that it is. So today I have a couple of pans and pots that are inherited from the Viking travels. And when it comes to the ingredients, I think that's what most people think of the new Nordic cooking. They think of the ingredients. I mean, that's what Noma did. They swapped the map around and started sourcing ingredients from Northern Europe instead of Southern Europe, as you used to do. But for me, an ingredient is important, but the most important thing is the technique. And the technical aspect of the cooking, I find more fascinating than the ingredient itself. These are blueberries, by the way. They're very delicious. It's a beef and some dried fish that I'm raised on. And actually, the interesting thing when you go back in history, and I think this is what you do so fascinating in Turkey as well, because when you go back in history, you find all these fascinating facts about all these functional food and how great they are for you. And the dried fish and the fermented fish in Sweden and in Norway and in Scandinavia in general, made us survive the winters because we have darkness. Where I'm from, at now it's 24-hour darkness. We don't have sun, and we don't have daylight. It's pitch black. And but the dried fish gave us vitamin D that's essential for surviving these long winters. And people knew this, but they didn't know what it was. They just knew if we ate fish, we didn't kill ourselves. Beer is great too. And so a lot of people, so what I decided to do with my restaurant was I decided that I wanted it to be completely fired or fueled or energized by the wood, by the tree. And the landscape in Scandinavia has a lot of trees to it, but it's mostly pine trees. And the best tree to use when cooking Scandinavian food is birch. Birch has high energy, there's a lot of flavor into it, and pine tree is very difficult to keep to grilling on and having as a fire. And not only is the leaf tree great to cook on and to use, it's also very, very good to plant and to keep it more sustainable, because we want a diverse forest. We don't only want like one tree. It's just like monologue. We want a lot of different species of trees. So actually, by using birch tree, we can enhance that and use more. And so this is the kitchen itself. So it's based on the birch, the wood, the tree, and the fire, and then the cast iron. And the cast iron itself, it's so important in Scandinavian cooking because it's not only the iron itself, it was also something that we enhanced and used as a functional food because it has iron content. And what's really interesting by this was when my wife was pregnant with our first first son. We didn't have a girl. When my wife was pregnant with our first son, we went to the midwife and the doctor, and they did the blood tests on her. And usually you're given iron content in Sweden to women who are pregnant, but he said the iron was so good in her blood that she didn't need any tablets, and it was thanks to my cooking. I know. Thank you very much. But I think that these things are so fascinating that not only, and people back in the days, like 200 years ago, they cooked pregnant women in cast iron pans because they knew this had iron content. But they did not know what vitamins were. Vitamins were invented way longer. So I think these are so fascinating. But the kitchen itself, it's built like this, and every time I do a new technique, I go to the Royal Library in Stockholm, and I try to find a technique that's forgotten, and then bring it back to and make a contemporary dish with it. So I'm not like usually in the new Nordic cooking movement, you start off with an ingredient, and that the ingredients become a dish. While I try to focus on the technique, and then the technique becomes the dish. And so here you can see the kitchen from the side. And so in the middle are these bricks that I started using. And that was something that I saw coming. I saw it in a book that you don't really need to lock your bricks or to use in a cement. You can just have loose bricks. So whenever I'm doing a new technique or something new, I can just move the bricks either left or right, depending on what I want to do. On the top right-hand corner, I call it the Stone Age microwave. And it's Freddie Flintstone inspired. And it's actually, so I have that little block up on the top, and when the heat gets too warm from the fire, I can use a little bit of amber in on the corner there. And the tools that we use in the restaurant are old, ancient tools that are usually forgotten. And what's really fascinating is that we can now find them with the help of the librarian in the Stockholm library. So the Royal Library in Stockholm is a huge benefit for me because everything that's ever printed in Sweden is in the library. And so all these old techniques, I ask them to find them, and then they can find a drawing on the old tool. And then sometimes even the blacksmith have the tool itself in the archive, and I can bring it to life. And at this example, it's an iron cone where we're heating fat, and the fat is dripping onto this oyster. So it's a beef fat cooked oyster. But here again, it's the technical aspect of the dish itself. And these are 3 other types of techniques that I use. It's like amber cooked fish, just heated log, and then the fish cooked on the sear side, seared fruit on the ambers, and again, cast iron and meat. And also the bread we make by hand in an old wooden way. The products, these are celeriac, and you can see another picture of the ambers there. And to finish off with, I'd like to tell you a little story from the restaurant that I find fascinating. It's like how people see things. And so this was one day, and my Norwegian cousin comes into the restaurant, and it's the second day, third day we have the restaurant open, and he goes, "Oh, it smells like hytte, like my cottage, like my summer house." And so he was referring to that. And then my son comes in, and he smells around, and he says like, "Oh, it smells like scout camp." You know, that was his memory from the fire and from the birch. And then my grandmother comes into the restaurant, and she smells, and she goes, "It smells like poverty." Because that was, for her, fire was when she was young and poor. And for my son, it was the scout camp. And for me, it's my success, it's my life, and the most valuable thing for my entire life, my little restaurant in Stockholm. So thank you very much, guys, for listening and staying so long. And I hope to see you soon.
See, I told you, it's not about the quantity.
No.
It's only the quality.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. A little souvenir too.
Yeah, I have 14 seconds left.
I know. Now you're passing, actually. Thank you so much.